All right, join us on the program, Congressman Blake Farenthold from the great state of Texas. Congressman, good evening to you, sir.
Hey, good to be with you, Cam.
It's great having you on board once again. All right, so we heard from Katie Pavlich at townhall.com today that maybe during the August recess that the Attorney General might be hit with this fast and furious lawsuit seeking to compel the release of the 1,300 subpoena documents. What can you tell us, Congressman?
Well, we're ready to go with the Government Oversight and Reform Committee. We have referred it to the attorneys, but anyone who has dealt with attorneys know they operate on attorney time.
Okay, so it's coming, but you got to get all of the legal work done and in order first.
All right, I would expect to see it soon, and I would imagine it would be this month, but, I used to practice law way back when, and I can tell you it always takes longer than you think.
Was that before or after your radio career?
Actually, I started as a DJ in junior high school. So it was between my DJ and before my talk radio.
Nice. All right, well, now we know the Blake Farenthold timeline a little bit better. Now, the El Paso Times is reporting that a gun tied to Fast and Furious was seized, I guess, back in 2010 in Tijuana in connection with a drug cartel's conspiracy to kill the police chief of Tijuana. He later became the police chief in Juarez. These guns, Congressman, so many of them are still unaccounted for, and then we're still finding out new information about guns that have been recovered in Mexico and in the United States.
They knew full well these guns were going to be used for illegal purposes when they let them walk into Mexico. The guys that were buying these were not buying these for bird hunters.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so, these guns that were going south of the border were being used in these crimes. The ATF officials, your report, the House Oversight report that came out last week, shows emails from ATF officials who recognize the PR problem, but Congressman, do they ever recognize the sheer moral problem of allowing these guns to knowingly fall into the hands of the cartel members, to not interdict, to not arrest when there was cases to be made against these individuals?
Well, under the best case scenario, they were negligent, and I can see how, in again, best case scenario, they got wrapped up in we're gonna snare a drug lord, or we're gonna shut down this whole firearms trafficking organization, and I think that blinded them to the big picture of what was going on.
Yeah, well,
that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is they fully intended these weapons to go into Mexico and create a crisis where the public pressure would be on the United States to implement stricter gun laws.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, this report that was issued last week says that the DEA, for example, gave ATF agents information on December 21st, 2009, about a shipment of 32 guns that suspects had obtained in Arizona, were planning to transport to El Paso, possibly onto Juarez. They had this information.
And they had some of the folks involved. They had 2 or 3 levels ready to go. The day after Brian Terry was killed, all of a sudden they finally got around to making an arrest.
I mean, all of these operations were just sort of open and free floating, even though the information that had been obtained was clearly enough at that point to shut it down.
Absolutely. You can look at the wiretap applications that were approved at the highest level of the Justice Department. If somebody had bothered to read those, and they would have known. And whether they read them or not, either situation there is bad. We've got 2 more reports coming out in the Government Oversight and Reform Committee. The first one that came out last week dealt with operations in the field, and the next 2 deal with management. The next one goes to ATF management, and then the final one will deal with the Justice Department, and for what I think is clearly a cover-up.
Look, I got to tell you, Congressman, when you have, I've yet to see the legal expert on executive privilege say, well, the administration is a really strong case. I mean, when even the Washington Post comes out and says,
really,
the Obama administration really needs to release these documents. There is no legal leg to stand on. If the case that the administration is making were to be upheld in court, basically any employee of the executive branch, any email they write, any memo they write, could be held as executive privilege.
We might as well. It would completely undermine the oversight authority of Congress. We on the Government Oversight and Reform Committee might as well pack our bags and just start naming post offices, because that's would be all that's left to do. The classic theory, well established back from the Nixon days and before, is that executive privilege is tightly wrapped around the president and his closest advisors. If, as Obama claims is true, he knew nothing about it, then by definition, executive privilege is not going to apply. And if he did know something about it, he's been lying to the American people.
Well, yes. And Congressman, I know that there's been a lot of talk of, can this get solved before the November election? I think the bigger question is, once this goes to the courts, we will see a resolution at some point, yes?
I'm hopeful, but again, everything gets dragged out, and I think this needs to be pursued. I'm not sure there weren't criminal acts that were committed within the Justice Department, especially with relation to withholding stuff from Congress.
Well, and if that was the case, again, we're not going to see the Justice Department investigate itself. We're not going to see the Justice Department appoint a special prosecutor. So if we're going to get answers, then I guess, Congressman, we kind of need a change in administration this November.
Well, I think that's going to happen. This administration has been very forthcoming with information from Operation Wide Receiver, but when it comes to Fast and Furious, their lips are sealed.
Absolutely. In fact, I thought it was it's been one of the worst cases of spin we've seen from the administration on Fast and Furious. We've got Attorney General Holder on tape talking to your colleague, Senator Cornyn, admitting you can't compare Wide Receiver and Fast and Furious, admitting that there were clear differences in the two operations. And Eric Holder himself says, and I wasn't trying to draw the comparison between the operations. Well, now you do have the DOJ trying to draw the comparison. Now you do have Jay Carney in the White House trying to draw the comparison between these two operations.
It's gone from doing the right thing to politicizing, and the classic White House move, let's blame it on Bush.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Congressman, appreciate you coming on the program, sir, and enjoy your summer recess. You going to be spending it in the district?
Most of the time I'm in the district. I got a little bit of traveling. I'm doing the radio show that I used to do. Every Monday morning we had Brad Thor in the studio for 2 hours this morning. I think he's on his way over to my house for fajitas right now.
Really? All right, well, listen, you tell Brad that we need to have him on my show, and he promised when his new book came out that he would come on. So can you be our go-between?
When do you want him? I'll tell him tonight. They just texted me. He's on his way.
Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, enjoy the fajitas. Thank you again for your time, Congressman, and look forward to doing this again soon.
Thanks.